Hello everybody, Steven here with Cardboard Coalition, and today I figured I would do my best to bring you a playthrough of Osprey Games Imperium Classic. So this is a 1 to 4 player deck building game, and its weight is medium to high. It's not medium, it's not high or heavy, sorry, it's not medium, it's not heavy, it's medium heavy. It's kind of in between. If you look on BGG, it's something like a 3.62 out of 5 to give you guys numbers. If you guys are like some of you guys new to gaming and just want to know some stuff, just means it's up there a little bit. It's not the hardest game to learn, but it's not the easiest game to learn. And it's definitely not right in the middle. But I'm going to do my best to kind of show you guys, teach you guys how to play this game. So what we have set up here is a 2-player game. We have the Persians over here. We have the Vikings over here. So the first thing you do to play this game is you got to figure out who you want to be. The version that I have is Classics. I do want to get Legendary. I'm waiting to find it at a good deal. But I have Classics. So in this one you have the Greeks, you have Romans, you have Vikings, you have Celts, you have Persians, and I'm missing a couple because when I first introduced it to a friend, I said there were a couple civilizations that weren't there and I felt bad. But some of the classic civilizations, mostly real, though my friend and I did find some fictional characters put in there. So first, you find what civilization you want to be. And the more you know about the decks, that maybe you can pick it on powers and stuff. But I would say you start off by just picking who you want. For this one, I decided to go with the Persians because of Rezvan. And unfortunately, she's not here with us today. And this is a game she'll have to be here to play. But I picked the Persians, and I picked the Vikings more because I have Germanic blood in me, so I like the Vikings. And lots of people like Vikings, but that's why I picked those two. So we have, first you set up the 2-player areas. And by doing that, you set down the power card, which just represents a special ability that you have for the people that you chose. All right, and then there's some scoring things later on. So first you put down the power card. Then you set up the nation cards. Nation deck. These are called your nation deck, and that bottom card's there. You set up your nation deck, then you set up your development deck. Vikings don't have a development deck, and we'll talk about that in a second. All the different factions, nations are asymmetrical, which means they have distinct powers and abilities, not similar. There are some similarities in what they can do, but they have distinct feel, powers, and abilities. So the Vikings, they don't get the development deck. So anyways, put down your power card, you put down your nation deck, and then you put down your development deck, which they don't have. Then you put your state card, and this means the state of your civilization, right? It's easy to mix up with like, oh, it's a state. It's the state of your civilization. So you put down your state cards. Everyone starts off as barbarian. In the instructions there, I think there is at least one, this is in the legends, that don't start barbarian, but most off everyone starts barbarian. Vikings don't get a switch to, I forget the other side of it, I want to say it's civilized, and I'll flip over this card and make a mess. Empire. I knew I was going to get it wrong. It's empire. So you're a barbarian or you're an empire. So, and it's easy because I'm thinking civilized, uncivilized, but you're in the barbarian state. When you start, so everybody puts down their barbarian state card, and we'll talk about how that flips over later. So then you have the player area set up. Next, you get out all the tokens, which you see on the edge. You have your action tokens. I'm probably calling them wrong names. If you hear paper, it is because I'm flipping through the manual. Action tokens, I believe. These are your exhaust tokens. These are materials, these are people, and these are victory points. All right. So you get those out, and then you give each player 5, you give them 5 exhaust tokens. We'll explain what that means in a minute. And you give them 3 action tokens. You also give them 1 person's token, 1 people token, 1 person token, and 3 materials token for each player. Now, once again, it varies on which group you pick and what you put out there. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head, the Utopians, which are a legendary civilization, I think they only get 3, but so on and so forth. But once you set up this, you give the exhaust, you give the action, you give the materials and the persons or peoples. Then you set up the cards. You put out the Unrest Cards, which these basically clog up your deck and you kind of want to get rid of. You set up the Fame deck, right? Then you set up the Region deck, the Uncivilized deck, the, oh, I messed that up a little bit. There should be cards, some cards up there. Then you put the Civilized deck. Sorry, I'm doing a little, trying to find 5 of them. The Civilized deck, which is right here. Then you set up the Market deck. This is considered the Market deck. And what the Market deck consists of is what's left over from your Region cards, your Civilized, your Uncivilized, and then your Tributary cards. Then you shuffle them up and you put one of each out. Once you've done that, then you go ahead and you put Unrest Cards, and the instruction manual, set manual tells you how to do this. You put Unrest Cards under any Uncivilized, Civilized, or Tributary card. Region cards don't get it. And these are those Unrest Cards. And then the last thing you do is you take a victory point and you put it on any Civilized card without the Uncivilized marker. Because if you see some Uncivilized have the Civilized, Uncivilized marker. And though it might seem like a lot, once you start getting down what the symbols and stuff mean, it makes it much easier to understand how to set up this game. And it does take some investment in this game. Worthwhile investment, but some investment. So now you have all the decks set up. You've put down the Unrest Cards. You've put down the victory point. You're ready to rumble, right? So now you're ready to rumble. Oh, no, you're not. You have to put down the Solstice card. Leave it to me to always forget something. You have to put down the Solstice card. And what you do is you put it down randomly between 2 players, right? And the play goes, you pick a person to start playing, and then it goes clockwise, right? Or to the left. They always say like 2 left, 2 right. You can go clockwise, counterclockwise. It goes clockwise. Something happens once you get all the way around. That's all this is to remind you of. That everybody at the table's gone. Now it's the Solstice. Solstice things happen. Then next player goes and you go all the way around the table again. This is set up in a 2-player, so the Solstice card is put between the 2 players. Also, just as a quick note, when you set up these decks, because we are playing with 2 players, it's 6 cards per deck, and then you flip one of those cards down, right? Except for here you put 2. But just so you know, it's set up, this is completely set up 6-player. Now that we know the basic setup, and you want to make sure all this is in reach of everybody, all the tokens and stuff. But once the setup is ready, each player will pull 5 cards from their deck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then with those cards, they have some actions they can do. We'll just cross them that way on here, just because there's not a lot of space. 2, 3, 4, 5. So each player's got their hand of 5. They can look through them, right? Figure out what they want to do, how they want to play them. They set them down here. So this is how play goes. When it's your turn, you have some options of things that you can do. And yes, once again, you do hear me flipping through the books. I want to make sure I like this game and I want people to like it and play it. So the 3 things you can do is you can activate, you can innovate, or you can revolt. Those are the 3 things: activate, innovate, or revolt. So on your turn, you can only pick one of those 3 things: activate, innovate, or revolt. So let's start with activate. So if you activate, you have these activation tokens. I think I called them action tokens, activation tokens. You have 3 activation tokens, right? You use those tokens to play cards, right? And you have cards, right? And if you want to play one of the cards, you use the token. So let's say you want to put down a Garrison. So you would put that down. Let's see if we can get that in camera. And you would take one of the tokens off your card to represent that you have used 1 action, right? And you got more actions you can play. And there's that naughty Unrest card, right? So you put down 1 action. The other thing that you can do during the activate phase, right, is you can use exhaust tokens. And what this does, it just represents that you've used the card. I don't think I have a card here, because some of the cards, unless they have a certain symbol that shows the infinity, the card is used and thrown into the discard. See the infinity mark right there? If it shows that, the card can stay out. There are cards that can force it to go away and things like that. But you'll have some cards that are infinity cards, and to use those, you want to exhaust their ability. Or to use your ability here, right? You put down an exhaust token. So during activation, you can take 3 actions, which means you pay for 3 cards, right? Play 3 cards, and a lot of these will go into the discard pile when done. Let's just throw a couple in the discard pile. That's just where I put the discard pile, right? So you put down, you play some actions, and let's say we put 2 in there and we put a garrison out. So there's the three actions, but then we can also exhaust. So you can perform up to 3 actions and exhaust up to 5 of your cards, your infinity cards. You can put exhaust tokens on them. This one you wouldn't have to. During your activation phase, and then you're done. So that's 1, activation. You can do 3 actions, which are playing cards. You can do 5 exhausts, which mean you put an exhaust token down on certain things, and then your turn would be over, but we'll go over what happens at the end of turn. Next is to innovate. What you do when you innovate is you're looking through your cards, you're like, ooh-wee, there's another Unrest card. Look, everybody has Unrest in their deck. Looking through your cards, you're like, I don't know, I think I really want this card right here. You can risk your entire hand. You would put them all in the discard pile, and you would be able to break through for this card. Now, this is an important thing, too, when learning the rules. You have to read the keywords. They give you a list of general keywords you should know to begin with, but it helps to read all the keywords. So breakthrough. What breakthrough means is you're allowed to take this card without taking the Unrest underneath. Because normally what will happen is a card will allow you to do things like pay X amount of people or material to get the card. If that happens, you get the Unrest card with you. They go to your discard pile. Sometimes you can acquire them into your hand directly too. Or sometimes you could pay a little bit more to break through, right? Just take this card and you don't take the Unrest card. So if you wanted to, you can get rid of your whole hand. You can look at your hand during your Innovate and go, none of this is looking good for me right now. I'm going to go ahead and innovate. So you choose to innovate, you get rid of your whole deck, you break through for a card, and you put that card on top of your deck. On top of your discard pile, sorry, on top of your discard pile. Then, of course, you take a card from the deck above, you flip it over, and you put it on top. And it'll tell you if it has certain symbols, uncivilized, civilized, tributary, always get an Unrest card. When you read through it, it says put the Unrest over here, flip a card. If it's one of those cards, then put it back. That really just works over here. What a buddy and I have found while playing through this is it just helps to leave the card there and then see if you need it. So that is Innovate. You get rid of your entire deck. You discard your entire deck to get one of the cards from up here, right? And when you do that, you can get any card. You can get region cards, you can get uncivilized, civilized, tributary, and that's just another region card. All right. So that's the second thing. Then once your turn's done, you do certain things we'll talk about. The last thing that you can do out of the 3, right, the Activate, Innovate, and Revolt. So the last thing is to revolt. And what you do when you revolt, we'll just go ahead and go like this. I know I'm kind of skipping things all around, throwing things everywhere. So for Revolt, let's say you're looking at your hand of 5 cards and you're like, there's an Unrest. Or let's say you have 2 or 3 Unrests. What you could do is you can revolt. And what that means is, once again, you discard your entire hand to get rid of any amount of Unrest cards, and you just put them back into the Unrest deck, even if there's orange. So the colors just let you know which nation that deck goes to. But this card can go to anybody now that it's over there. It's just for cleanup. There's a lot done in here for a lot put on the cards for putting the cards out and for cleaning up. So you could do Revolt, which means you discard your entire hand and you put the all Unrest cards into the Unrest deck. You're just cleaning your deck. You're culling your deck of Unrest cards. So just to review, those are the 3 things you can do on your turn. You can activate. You can use up to 3 actions and 5 exhausts. You can innovate. You can get rid of your hand to break through for a card up here, not taking an Unrest card, which clogs up your deck. And you can revolt, which means you can get rid of any Unrest cards that are in your deck. You discard your deck. You can get rid of any Unrest cards in your hand. In your hand, Stephen, in your hand, in your hand. You can get rid of any Unrest cards in your hand by discarding your hand. and then your turn's over. Once your turn's over, there you still got a couple more things to do. So before your turn's completely over, you take one victory point and you pick a card. It could be any card here, and you decide to put that victory point on it. Mostly probably because you want to pick up that card later and you want that victory point. Right? And then you go ahead and you draw your hand back up to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. There should be one more in there. I'm missing a card somewhere. I probably put it in the wrong spot. So you draw back up to 5. Actually, we can use that right now. So what's all done? Let's go with this deck. You draw up to 5. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You draw your 5 cards. You say, yay, and you put those cards ready for the next round. Then you go ahead and you clean up any unrest tokens and any of the action tokens that you've put out, right? So let's say these are all out. Oh, you can't see those. Let's put them right here. Action tokens are out. You take all those and you clean them up. You put them back on your state card. Now, once that's done, everybody's done, then you go to the Solstice. And what this is there's certain cards that have Solstice effects. Gives you some things, lets you attack people, does different things. So you check any of your cards, because you'll have a player out here to the side of cards kind of put out, kind of like this one right here. You check those for any Solstice actions. If there's none, you just go back to the first person. Now, one of the things that I do want to show you guys is how do you get into this deck? And this deck, really. This took me and my buddy a little bit of reading and thinking. He's played games much more than I. I'm maybe a little bit above a novice. Maybe now I'm probably at a novice, right? In between noob and novice. A noob novice. But it took us a little bit of figuring out. But what happens is once you have to reshuffle how you get into these decks, right? These ones and these. So your nation decks and your development deck is whenever you have to reshuffle. So let's take this for example. I need 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4. I need one more card, which means I have to shuffle my discard pile and draw back up. Whenever I have to do that, I can look at my nation card. That's where you start first, is your nation deck. So you look at your nation deck and you say, there is no exhaust token on your nation deck. If you're a barbarian state. You look at your nation deck, no exhaust, you go ahead and let's say there's no exhaust on that nation deck, you go ahead and grab a card, right, from the top, and you put it in here. Then you shuffle all your cards, right, and we'll go like this, oh, shuffle, 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 and then we get back up to 5. So we know we have 4 here, we grab 5. And once you've drawn a card from there, you put an exhaust token on top of it like that. And that exhaust token stays there until your next cleanup. Now, let's say over here, because they have a development deck, how do we get into the development deck thing? Or the development deck. So how you have to get into that is you have to have gone through all of your nation cards, right? So if you notice there's that circle down there, that's the one that was faced up. So once you get through all these, same way, you got to shuffle. There's some cards that let you get into your nation deck too, but anytime you reshuffle, you can get into your nation deck if there's no exhaust on there and you're in barbarian state. So once you get that last one and you throw it in there, you flip over to Empire. Your state card flips over to Empire instantly because you've completely built up your nation deck. If you remember me saying, Vikings, they don't get to get a nation, they don't get to build an empire, right? So they're just barbarians. So once you're in the Empire phase, whenever you have to reshuffle, whenever you need cards, you need to reshuffle your deck, you can go ahead and do the same thing. Empire state, no exhaust tokens here. Take one card, put it in your discard pile, shuffle up, draw up to what you need to, and put an exhaust token right there. Well, no, I did that wrong. Rewind. You don't put an exhaust token. Bad Steven, bad Steven, bad Steven. So let's go back. What happens is once you're in Empire, right, and you need to reshuffle your deck, you can look over here and you can pay the cost for the card. So this one says development cost 4 people, right? And that's these tokens. You need to have 4 of these. You pay that cost. I mean, let's just say they have 4. this represents 3. Let's say they had 4 over here, right? They pay the cost, that goes into your discard pile. Whenever you need to shuffle this deck, if you're an Empire, then you can get cards from your development deck by paying the cost. Now, there are also cards that allow you to get cards from your development deck. There's cards that allow you to get cards from your nation deck, right? There's all kinds of cards that you can play, and cards up here and everywhere. And so you keep going round and round until some in-game mechanics hit. And so I want to make sure I get those completely correct. So yes, you are hearing me flip through the guide. So your end game starts, there's different things. There's scoring, right? And then there's collapse. So to go into a scoring phase, because collapse is really easy to understand, go into the scoring phase, there's a couple things you have to look at. Is this main deck empty? Right? When these decks run out and you need to put cards here, you find the card from the main deck, you put it here. When this deck goes empty, then you start the scoring phase. A player develops, figures out their entire development area, so they get all their cards from here. Then you go into scoring phase. If the Fame deck up here, someone gets to the King of King cards and they buy that card, then you go into scoring phase, right? And then you have something special. This is with Vikings. The Herald Hydrata, once that goes into your discard pile, you go into scoring phase, right? So what you do is you go ahead and go through there, and there's one for the Arthurians, and there's one for the Utopians, but we won't go over those. So once you get to any of those, right, main thing is main deck empties out, you get the King of King cards. If you're playing Vikings, if Herald Hydrata goes into the Viking discard pile, start scoring phase. What happens during scoring phase is everybody goes through one more turn. So you end the Solstice. So let's say they get to scoring phase, you end the Solstice, and then everybody gets one more turn, right? If we're playing 3-4 players, let's say player 2 causes the deck to run out. Then you still go all the way to the Solstice, and everybody gets one more turn, right? Then at the end, you score. And as you can see, there are some scoring things on the card. So there's 2 times, right? There's 2 victory points there. You have ones like this with asterisks, which I'm trying to read and show you guys. 1 victory point per 3 of these cards, right? 3 tributary cards. Now, how you get those is all the cards that are in your area, everything. You have a history. Where your history is below your power card. And those are cards that you tuck away forever. And some cards say you can put it in your history, right? Then you have all your cards out here. You can have Garrison Cards, which means you put cards in the Garrison. We found that that's really just for weeding out cards that you don't want to have in your hand. You count all the cards that are out. So you don't get to count the cards that you haven't developed. These are the 1 card you don't get to count. In your development or your nation area, if you haven't pulled those out, you don't get to count them. But any cards that you have out in your play area over here, any cards in your discard, any cards in your hand, any cards in your history, and your power card. So any card underneath your power card, you count all those points. And then you score through. So once an in-game mechanic is hit, you finish that round to the Solstice, then you do 1 more round through. Everybody gets 1 more turn. Then you score. The other way that the game ends, and this is really easy to go through, is, I want to make sure I get the right name for it, collapse. That means all of the Unrest cards are gone. No more Unrest cards here. That means there is collapse. What happens then is the game is automatically over, and then you count points. You count victory points. You count these. Who has the most of these? You don't get to finish that round and then do 1 more round. It's just stop. Right there, stop. Collapse happens, no more Unrest cards, stop, period. Everybody score. If the end game happens, right, the scoring phase, then you get to do the rounds and you score up. And that's basically how you play the game. And I say that and understand that with a grain of salt because it does take some reading. There are keywords, and I'll bring the little manual over here. There are keywords that you want to read through, right? And it tells you which ones to start with, but this one helps out a lot. And you want to make sure when you're reading through, you read closely how to get into it. But that's how you play. And I'll be doing a review. I almost said a couple things that I think right now, but I'll be doing a review. Hopefully this playthrough was helpful. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. I feel like that's the overall way to play this game. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm Steven with Cardboard Coalition. See you later, everybody. Bye.